Every day you wake up thinking you're in control, but you're not. Your comfort controls you. Your fear controls you. Your laziness controls you. And when discipline is missing, you're no better than an animal, just reacting, just surviving. This isn't an insult, it's the truth. And the truth is the only thing that's going to set you free. Today, I'm going to rip open the cage you build around yourself and show you how discipline is the key to becoming unstoppable. You see, animals act on impulse. Hungry, they eat. Tired, they stop. Scared, they run. But you were built for something greater. You were built to rise above instinct, to master your mind, to take control of your body, and to dominate your life. That's why this message matters. Because without discipline, you're trapped in survival mode, and survival mode is why your dreams keep dying. This video isn't about tearing you down. It's about showing you the truth. Discipline is what separates you from the herd. Discipline is what transforms weakness into strength. And if you stick with me through this message, you'll understand exactly how to break free from the cage you've been living in. You want to know why you're stuck. Why no matter how many times you start something, you quit halfway. Why every single time life throws pressure your way, you fold like paper. It's because you've been living without discipline. And without discipline, you're not functioning like the human being you were designed to be. You're living on autopilot. You're living like an animal. Animals don't think long term. Animals don't strategize. Animals don't build legacies. They react. They chase food when they're hungry. They run when they're scared. They sleep when they're tired. That's it. Survival. Nothing more. And the truth is, too many have fallen into that same pattern. Wake up, eat, scroll, work a little, complain a lot, then crash into bed just to repeat the same cycle. That's not living. That's surviving. Discipline is the dividing line. It's the thing that separates you from operating on pure instinct and elevates you into a life of purpose. Without it, you're stuck in the mud, chasing comfort, chasing the path of least resistance, and wondering why nothing in your life feels different. Discipline is not about punishment. It's not about being a drill sergeant to yourself. It's about control. It's about proving to yourself that you run this machine, not your impulses, not your cravings, not your emotions. The moment you take back control, you stop being an animal that reacts and start being a human being who creates. Think about it. How many times have you said you were going to do something? Lose weight, start running, build a business, wake up early. And you didn't follow through. That's not because you're weak. It's because you've been living undisciplined. And undisciplined living makes promises impossible. An animal can't plan to run a marathon. An animal can't decide to sacrifice today for a better tomorrow. But you can. You just don't, because discipline is missing from your life. And that's the ugly truth no one wants to face. You want to act like you're motivated, but motivation is a spark that dies fast. Discipline is the fire that keeps burning when everything else inside you wants to quit. You see, animals run when they're tired, but you, with discipline, keep moving when your legs burn. Animals eat when they're hungry. You, with discipline, say no because you've got a bigger goal in front of you than instant satisfaction. Animals freeze when fear hits. You, with discipline, step forward because you've trained your mind not to let fear run the show. That's the difference. And until you accept it, you'll stay stuck chasing your tail like a dog in circles, never getting anywhere. Discipline isn't sexy. It's not the highlight reel on Instagram. Discipline is getting up when the bed feels warm. Discipline is going for that run when no one is watching. Discipline is saying no when everyone around you is saying yes. Discipline is the quiet grind that no one claps for, but it's the only thing that makes you more than just an animal surviving. It makes you a force. It makes you someone people can't ignore. It makes you the kind of human being who doesn't just exist in this world, but leaves a damn mark on it. And don't get it twisted. Discipline isn't something you're born with. It's something you build. Every single rep, every early morning, every decision to push when you don't feel like it is a brick. And those bricks stacked one after the other build the foundation of who you become. Without those bricks, without that foundation, you're hollow. You're just noise. Just another person talking about what they want to do, but never actually doing it. That's why you're frustrated. That's why you feel empty. Because deep down you know you were meant for more, but you're living like less. So when I say without discipline, you're just an animal. I'm not here to insult you. I'm here to remind you of what's at stake. Because animals can't choose to level up. Animals can't push past their instincts. You can. That's what makes you human. That's what makes you dangerous. But only if you choose it. Only if you wake up and realize that every time you let comfort win, Every time you give in to your impulses, you're giving up the one thing that separates you from the pack. You're giving up the ability to take control of your life. And if you're not in control of your life, then who is? Your fear, your laziness, your excuses. That's no way to live. You've got to decide right now whether you're going to stay stuck in survival mode or step into the life discipline makes possible. Discipline is the weapon. Discipline is the shield. Discipline is the path. Without it, you'll keep existing. With it, you start living. With it, you start creating. With it, you start becoming who you were born to be. You want to know who you are. Look at your habits. Look at your choices. Don't look at the words you say. Don't look at the goals you write in your notebook. Don't look at the promises you post online. Your identity isn't what you claim. It's what you live. And discipline is the only thing that builds that identity. Without it, you're not you. You're just a bundle of excuses waiting for the right time to quit. People love to say, that's just who I am. They hide behind personality. They hide behind labels. I'm not a morning person. I've always been lazy. I just don't have that kind of willpower. That's not identity. That's an excuse dressed up to sound permanent. Discipline is what rips away those excuses and forces you to rewrite who you are. Because who you are is not fixed. Who you are is what you're willing to do day after day when nobody's watching. You don't get to call yourself strong if you give in every time it gets hard. You don't get to call yourself dedicated if you only show up when it's easy. You don't get to call yourself disciplined if your actions crumble the moment life gets uncomfortable. Your identity is carved by the choices you repeat, and every excuse you give yourself is another crack in the foundation. Discipline doesn't allow cracks. Discipline forces you to rebuild until the structure is solid. Think about it. Every time you tell yourself, I'll start tomorrow, you're training yourself to be the kind of person who doesn't follow through. Every time you skip the workout, every time you hit snooze, every time you say yes to comfort instead of your commitment, you're stamping your identity with weakness. You're teaching yourself, this is who I am. I'm someone who quits. And then you wonder why nothing changes. But when you decide to live with discipline, every small action, every choice becomes a brick in the wall of who you are becoming. You don't just run a mile. You prove to yourself that you're the kind of person who runs even when it hurts. You don't just wake up early. You prove that you're the kind of person who values growth over comfort. You don't just say no to excuses. You build an identity that can't be bought, bribed, or broken by the easy way out. That's what discipline does. It builds a reputation with yourself. And that reputation is worth more than anything people on the outside think about you. Because here's the truth. Most people live as prisoners of their excuses. They believe those excuses so deeply that it becomes their identity. I'm too tired. I'm too busy. I'll never be like them. They say it so often it becomes their truth. But the truth doesn't care about what you say. Truth shows up in what you do. And the only way to flip that script, to build a new identity that commands respect, is through discipline. Discipline isn't glamorous. Discipline doesn't care about your feelings. Discipline isn't built in one day of motivation. It's built in the days you don't want to do it. It's built when you're tired, when you're stressed, when you'd rather quit. Those are the moments that forge identity. That's where the transformation happens. Every time you push when you want to stop, you're hammering away at the old version of yourself. You're killing the excuses and building someone new in their place. And that's why people who live with discipline walk differently. They don't just talk about who they want to be. They are who they say they are, because their actions back it up. You can see it in their eyes. You can feel it in their presence. They're not running on motivation. They're running on identity. And that identity was forged in the fire of discipline. So stop hiding behind excuses. Stop telling yourself, that's just how I am. That's not how you are. That's how you've chosen to be. And the beauty of being human is you get to choose differently. You get to break the cycle. You get to become someone new. But the price is discipline. Discipline is the hammer and chisel that carves identity out of the block of excuses you've been hiding behind your whole life. And until you pick it up, you'll keep being defined by your weakness instead of your strength. Pain is the language of growth. Pain is the test life throws at you to see what you're really made of. But most people run from pain. They see pain as the enemy, as punishment, as a reason to quit. That's why they stay weak. That's why they stay stuck. That's why their dreams rot in the graveyard of excuses. Because animals run from pain. But discipline teaches you to run into it. Discipline teaches you to grab pain by the throat and turn it into the very fuel that drives you forward. When you live without discipline, pain owns you. The moment it hurts, you stop. The moment it burns, you back off. The moment it gets heavy, you put it down. That's how animals live. Avoiding discomfort, chasing safety, surviving instead of thriving. But when you choose discipline, you flip the script. Pain stops being a wall and becomes a doorway. Pain stops being a signal to quit and becomes the proof that you're on the right path. Discipline teaches you that every rep that burns is building you. Every mile that hurts is transforming you. Every sacrifice that stings is shaping the identity you said you wanted but never earned. People talk about wanting strength, wanting success, wanting greatness, but they want it without pain. They want the prize without a fight. And that's why they'll never get it. Because greatness doesn't come gift wrapped. Greatness comes in the form of struggle, of sweat, of suffering. Discipline is the voice that says, don't run from this. Don't hide from this. Lean into it. This is the price. This is the way. Without that voice, you'll tap out like everyone else. With it, you'll discover a power you didn't even know you had. Let me tell you something. Pain isn't permanent, but the lessons it gives you are. Every time you choose discipline in the face of pain, you're engraving strength into your character. You're teaching your mind that suffering doesn't break you. It builds you. That fire in your chest, that ache in your muscles, that doubt screaming in your head, that's the process of transformation. Discipline keeps you in the fight long enough to see it through. Animals escape pain because they don't know better. They're wired to survive. But you're not just here to survive. You're here to conquer, to grow, to create. That requires discipline, because without discipline, pain will always feel like punishment. With discipline, pain becomes your greatest ally. Discipline reframes suffering into a weapon. It takes what everyone else runs from and makes it the very thing that makes you unstoppable. Think about your life. Every breakthrough you've ever had, every time you've leveled up, it came on the other side of pain. It came after the late nights, the early mornings, the sacrifices, the days when you felt like quitting but didn't. That wasn't luck. That was discipline guiding you through the storm. Pain was the doorway. Discipline was the key that let you walk through it. Without that key, you'd still be standing outside, looking at the life you wanted but never living it. Discipline doesn't just help you endure pain. It transforms your relationship with it. Discipline makes you hungry for it. Because once you realize that pain is proof of growth, you stop fearing it and start chasing it. You see pain and you say, good. That means I'm in the right place. That means I'm getting stronger. That means I'm building something no one can take from me. That's the mindset discipline builds. That's the power it unlocks. Most people will never understand this because they're addicted to comfort. They want the shortcut. They want the easy way. They want the results without the sacrifice. That's why their lives never change. But discipline destroys that addiction. Discipline teaches you that comfort is the enemy, that comfort kills dreams, and that pain is the only path forward. And once you embrace that, once you decide you'd rather suffer in the pursuit of growth than rot in the arms of comfort, you become unstoppable. Pain doesn't care about your excuses. Pain doesn't care about your story. It shows up to test you. The question is, do you have the discipline to answer? Most people don't. They fold. They hide. They go back to comfort. But the few who stand tall, the few who keep moving when their lungs are on fire and their legs feel like concrete, are the ones who transform. Not because they're special. Not because they were born different. But because they had the discipline to stay in the fire long enough to become something more. Everybody wants freedom. Everybody talks about wanting to live life on their own terms, wanting to be in control, wanting to do what they want when they want. But here's the truth nobody wants to hear. Freedom without discipline is a lie. If you don't have discipline, you're not free, you're a slave. You're a slave to laziness, a slave to impulses, a slave to fear, a slave to the same patterns that keep you stuck in the life you claim you hate. Discipline is the only thing that breaks those chains. Discipline is the only path to real freedom. You think freedom is about doing whatever you feel like. Wake up whenever you want, eat whatever you want, skip the hard work whenever you don't feel like it. That's not freedom. That's weakness dressed up like choice. Because here's what happens when you live like that. Your body owns you, your cravings own you, your excuses own you. You're not free, you're trapped. Trapped in bad habits. Trapped in cycles you can't break. Trapped in the prison of your own comfort zone. And you're the one who built the cage. Discipline is what smashes that cage. Discipline gives you control over yourself. And that's the only control that matters. You can't control the world. You can't control how life treats you, but you can control how you show up. You can control whether you hit snooze or get out of bed. You can control whether you chase comfort or chase growth. You can control whether you let fear make your decisions or whether you act in spite of it. That's freedom. The ability to say, no matter what's happening out there, I run this. Think about it. When you live without discipline, you're constantly being pulled by forces outside of you. You're dragged around by cravings, by laziness, by other people's opinions, by every little distraction. That's not freedom, that's chaos. You're not the driver, you're the passenger. You're being taken wherever the road of weakness wants to drag you. But discipline puts your hands back on the wheel. Discipline says, I decide where I'm going. I decide how I respond. I decide how this story ends. That's what freedom really is. Most people think discipline is a restriction. They think it's a prison. I don't want to live a disciplined life. I want to enjoy myself. But let me tell you something. Undisciplined living is the real prison. Because you might feel good for a moment, but long term you're trapped. Trapped in debt because you couldn't discipline your spending. Trapped in sickness because you couldn't discipline your eating. Trapped in weakness because you couldn't discipline your training. Trapped in regret because you couldn't discipline your decisions. Discipline looks like restriction in the moment, but it is liberation for the rest of your life. You want freedom with your body. Discipline is the key. Do you want financial freedom? Discipline is the key. You want freedom in your mind, the ability to not be owned by fear, by anger, by doubt. Discipline is the key. Freedom without discipline is just fantasy. Everybody wants the dream, but nobody wants the process. And discipline is the process. It's the hard, daily, unsexy, relentless process of doing what needs to be done even when you don't feel like it. That process is what buys you freedom. Animals don't have discipline. Animals chase instinct. Hungry, they eat. Tired, they stop. Scared, they ran. That's survival. That's not freedom. That's the reaction. But you were born with the ability to rise above instinct. You were born with the ability to choose discomfort now for freedom later. That's what separates you. And that's why discipline is the highest form of freedom. Because it lets you transcend the pull of instinct and start living a life of purpose. When you wake up early, even when you don't feel like it, that's not restriction, that's freedom. You just proved you're stronger than comfort. When you grind in silence while everyone else is wasting time, that's not punishment, that's freedom. You just proved you're stronger than distraction. When you push through fear and do the thing anyway, that's not pain, that's freedom. You just proved you're stronger than the cage your mind tried to lock you in. That's what discipline does. It unlocks doors nobody else can even see. Freedom is earned. It's not given. And it's earned through discipline. Every choice to sacrifice now for something greater later is you buying back your life one decision at a time. You don't get to call yourself free if you can't even control yourself. You don't get to call yourself free if your emotions and cravings are running the show. Discipline is the proof of freedom. Without it, you're a prisoner in disguise. With it, you can break out of the cycle and finally take ownership of who you are, where you're going, and what you'll become. You've been told your whole life that motivation is enough, that wishing and wanting are enough. But now you know the truth. Without discipline, you're just reacting, just existing, just surviving like every other animal on this planet. Discipline is the line. Discipline is the separation. Discipline is the difference between living small and living unstoppable. It's the discipline that makes you human. It's the discipline that builds your identity, not your excuses. It's the discipline that transforms pain into power, that takes suffering and turns it into strength. And it's discipline that buys you the freedom you keep chasing but never find. So the question is simple. Are you going to keep living like an animal, owned by comfort, owned by fear, owned by weakness? Or are you going to take back control, choose discipline, and finally live like the human you were meant to be? Because at the end of the day, it's not your dreams, it's not your words, it's not your intentions that define you. It's the discipline you live by. And discipline doesn't lie.